Realtors report 50% spike in canceled listings. Does this mean the housing market is for an upturn? It's weird, but I feel like the housing market will never kind of see a crash. I don't know. Like, I feel like it's weird, Greg, because in like the stock market and homes, right? If it goes down 5%, that's like really big, you know? So, I guess I don't really understand because, like, I mean, I guess it does matter, right? If you put 100K in and it goes down to 95K, it does really matter. I guess I just don't see it that way, but yeah, for sure. I don't know if homes are going back.
Sellers on the U.S. housing market are pushing back, and they are not accepting the fact that the housing market is going into a downturn, everyone. This is crazy news. Data from Realtor.com shows that seller delistings are up 47% year over year as of May 2025. Simply put, the sellers, many of whom have had their houses listed for a while, they're now yanking them off the market because they can't find a buyer at the price they want. With some now questioning if this is going to impact the speed of the housing market downturn. If these sellers are going to stubbornly remove their homes from the market, is that going to stop home prices from going down? Is that going to stop inventory from growing? And what's going to happen in the second half of this year? Well, I'm going to cover all of that.
It's not going to go down, right? Because no matter what, there's always some big corporation buying homes. So I don't know. I feel like all this stuff is just a sham, but we'll listen to this guy anyways. Let's see what he says.
In this video, starting with where sellers are delisting houses most. You can see this map from Realtor.com shows that Phoenix, Tampa, and Miami are the markets where sellers are pulling houses off the market. And
Well, then it doesn't matter. I mean, there's not that many people that live, well, there is a lot of people that live there, but I'm saying in comparison, and also that's like a super expensive areas. I don't know about Phoenix, but I'm sure it's probably more decent than Miami, but I don't know, man. I just feel like it's all a distraction from the fact that they're actually buying more homes, and actually homes are very scarce.
in fact, in a market like Phoenix, for every 100 new homes listed, there's 30 sellers yanking their house off the market. Now, the question I have, is this a sign of just how bad the housing market is right now? Because if sellers are delisting their properties 47% more this year than last year, that in and of itself is showing you just how slow this market is. And the fact that a lot of sellers are still disconnected from reality. They still want peak prices. They still want what their neighbors sold their house for 3 or 4 years ago, and they're not willing to accept less. And this type of behavior is actually very common in the midst of housing market downturns. In any type of downturn, actually, even if it's like the stock market or any asset class where prices start dropping, there's this period of denial that sellers have in that market where they say to themselves like, oh, this isn't real, this is no big deal, this actually isn't happening. And I believe we're going through that right now in the US housing market in a state like Florida, where I'm standing right now. This is one of the biggest states for delisting of homes, and the values here, they're down 3.8% over.
Well, hey, look at Kentucky. It's 6.1. Yeah, I don't know. The truth is, I think homes will always be expensive. I don't think that's going to change. But I also think it's not like... Either way, homes are going to go up in price. So there's really nothing to be scared about. You just have to... It's just, I feel like it's all fear just to get you to not think it's possible, And you can buy a home in a lot of places, it's just not going to be directly where maybe you want it to be. I'm willing to compromise. When I go buy a home, I'm willing to compromise as long as I can be free.
Over the last year, and you see a lot of sellers when they list their house, like they're not accepting that. They still want peak price. But the thing is, folks, after the period of denial often comes the period of capitulation. And what I think a lot of these sellers are missing is just the overall trajectory of the market, because the listings and the inventory on the market keeps going up. Same data from Realtor.com shows that we now have almost 1.1 million active listings across the US housing market as of June 2025. That listing count, that inventory count, is now almost back to pre-pandemic levels on a national basis. And in a state like Florida, inventory is way above where it was before the pandemic. And across the entire South, actually, the 16-state southern region, inventory is above pre-pandemic levels. So when you have all that inventory and you have demand still down considerably from pre-pandemic levels, you're gonna have a soft housing market. You're gonna have home prices dropping. You're gonna have sellers getting frustrated. And my fear for a lot of these sellers who are delisting is that they don't understand what they're about to walk into 6 to 12 months down the line.
I don't think anybody who has a home should be worried. If you own your home, then, I mean, I don't know. I guess if you have a couple homes, right, and you're selling one of them, you might have trouble because it may not sell because people don't have the money anymore. You know, who has the money to buy a home right now? Only a very few select people, and they probably don't want your specific home. But as they give you stimulus, give us stimulus checks and stuff to get the economy booming again, we're gonna see more people buying homes again, and then it should be fine. But it's all just a weird cycle we're on. I realized it's some weird loop. But yeah, I mean, as long as, you know, you're not like super strapped for cash and all this other stuff, and then now you're trying to sell your home, you should be fine. And I feel like most people, well, can't speak for everybody's finances, but I couldn't imagine too many people are like, well, I don't know. Everyone's situation is different, so I can't say, but you shouldn't be that worried, I guess.
I mean, here in Florida, for instance, everyone, our Reventure app home price forecast is saying minus 6.2% in Florida the next 12 months at a statewide basis. In some areas, we're thinking prices are going to drop 10% in the next 12 months. So if that's the case, why would you delist your home thinking you could sell it for more 6 to 12 months from now? It doesn't make any sense. But this is just the way things go, everyone. Housing market downturns take time to play out. You know, it doesn't happen at lightning speed, because in the end, owning a house, it's an emotional thing. People live there. They have it in their family for generations in some cases, and they get attached to it, and they have a dollar value in their head of what they think it's worth. And to de-anchor a seller from that perspective, often it takes time, it takes years, it takes buyers offering 30% below what it's worth for them to finally understand that if they want to sell it, they're going to have to cut the price. However, here's an interesting question. What if a lot of the sellers on the US housing market don't actually have to sell? Like, what if there's a certain share of listings on the market where sellers are just listing for fun, just to see if they can get a certain price, and if they don't get it, they're just going to take it off the market, and maybe they don't even have to sell in a year. Maybe they can hold for 5 years or 10 years and then sell down the line. And one argument in favor of that is the fact that a lot of owners on the housing market have cheap mortgage rates. Around 22% of all mortgage holders in America have a rate less than 3%. So if you have a rate less than 3%, or you have a rate from 3 to 4, you might not be in a hurry to sell your house. You might be happy to just sit and wait for the market to quote unquote improve. In fact, earlier today I was in a neighboring neighborhood here in Fruitland Park, Florida, which is in Central Florida, about an hour outside of Orlando. And I talked to one of the homeowners in this neighborhood. And he was telling me how he bought his house in 2018 and that his monthly payment was $950 a month.
That's why I feel like I don't know if I want a mortgage, but well, I just renewed my lease here. Next year I'll definitely be trying to look for a home, or I'm gonna have it in the works. But yeah, I don't even want a mortgage, I'm being honest with you, but I want a smaller home so I don't have to have a mortgage. And then I just feel like I'll have passive income and I can just kind of do my own thing. That's my plan. We'll see how it goes, but yeah, I don't plan to get a big home or nothing. Realistically, this home I'm trying to acquire is just to help me get free. And then the next home I'll buy would be like a home for like a family or something after I get all my stuff squared away, like really good.
And I said to him, wow, that's amazing. Congrats. That's a really low payment. He said, yeah. He's like, there's no way I'm ever giving up that mortgage, which he said he had like a 2.5%, 2.4% mortgage. He said, there's no way I'm ever giving it up. And so from that perspective, you can see how an owner with a really cheap mortgage rate might list their house for some price, and if they don't get it, they'll just pull it. They don't care what's happening in the market overall. However, there's an issue with that perspective, everyone, and that issue ignores the overall situation going on in the market. Because every day that passes, fewer and fewer mortgage holders have a cheap mortgage rate, and more mortgage holders have an expensive mortgage rate. So right now, there's around 20% of mortgage holders that have a 6% rate or higher. You can see in the next couple quarters, we're going to actually have more mortgage holders in America with a rate over 6 than a rate under 3. And that's just because even though the sale transactions are really low, there's still around 4 million homes being sold on the existing market every year and another 600,000 from the builders. So there's just more homes entering the supply at a 6+% mortgage rate. The point is, with each passing day and month and quarter, the mortgage rate lock-in effect of all these low-rate mortgage holders influencing the market decreases. And in fact, there was a lot of people who bought the last 3 or 4 years at 6 or 7% mortgage rates because they thought they could just refinance when rates went down in the future, and then rates never went down in the future. Now I'm setting out on a road trip right now, everyone. I am currently in Fruitland Park, Florida, which is in central Florida between Orlando and the Villages. And this is where I'm starting my trip. Over the next couple weeks, I'm going to make my way up throughout the Southeast. I'm going to be...
Too many people, I feel like, rely on all these outside forces to determine what they think. You know, if you're, like you said, but if you have a good mortgage rate, you know, most people aren't really going to give that up. But, like, I feel like if the media tells you everything's crashing and then you sell, that's kind of ridiculous, right? Or, like, you should never let the news or media decide what you're going to do with your assets and your investments because, well, they have a reason to lie to you, you know? It's not like they want to help us. So if you get your news from, if you just take the information all from them, then they could tell you to jump off a bridge and you do it. Or at least you'd at least consider it because they told you it. I do consider some things, but you got to kind of make your own decisions.
Recording on the ground from different housing markets, live housing market reporting, so you guys can see what's going on, how much prices are dropping, or maybe they're even going up in certain areas still. I want to bring it all to you here on this channel. You guys can let me know where you want me to go. I think it's really important for me to go on these trips because, you know, while I bring you all the data in every single video, no matter where I am, is really seeing the listings live and talking to people on the ground, which gives you that full perspective on the market. And one perspective I'm getting, you know, being here in Central Florida, is that this downturn in Florida has spread to almost every part of Florida. So, you know, it started in Tampa and St. Petersburg and Sarasota. It started maybe in parts of the Panhandle, but now it's all across Florida. Prices are dropping literally everywhere. You can see this data on Reventure app is showing home values are down in pretty much every single county year over year in Florida, even in Orlando, even in Lakeland, even up in the Villages, even in these areas.
What does it matter though? That's my question, right? If you have a, let's just say $1 million home, right? And it's down 2.6%, 26,000. Why do you care? Like, as long as it's not like a 40% drop, right? Like, even if you have $1 million home and then it goes down to 900,000, do you really care that much? I don't know. I don't really care. I'm not gonna get scared, you know, and then sell my home for 820,000. Why would I do that? I don't know, man. I feel like, I guess for me, I don't have an emotional attachment to a home. Like, that doesn't do it for me, right? So I guess I just don't care. But for the people that do have emotional attachment to their homes, yeah, I could see, you know, but yeah, I mean, a home is just a home to me. Like, it literally doesn't even matter to me.
Areas that maybe aren't as negatively impacted by severe weather or where the insurance rates aren't that high, we're seeing values drop. And that's all due to inventory. There's 179,000 homes on the market in Florida right now. That's 30% more than Texas in second place, and that's more than double the third place state, California. So there's just so much supply on the market here in Florida. We have a 10-year record of supply.
Speaking of that, he was Tennessee, 32,000. That was also a place.
So there's just so much supply.
I would love to find a home.
The market here in Florida. We have a 10-year record of supply while demand is down about 15% from normal. So if you have a record in supply and demand's down 15%, you know what that means? Home prices are going to drop. But funny enough, everyone, I am coming to you from like one of the only zip codes in Florida where ReVenture is actually forecasting values to continue stabilizing over the next year. In this zip code, 34731, you guys should get your mobile apps out if you have the ReVenture mobile app and type that zip code in, 34731. That's where I am, and see why. The prices here are a bit cheaper than they are in the villages and are a bit cheaper than they are in Orlando. So I think people from both Orlando and the villages who are looking to save a bit of money, they're coming here to Fruitland Park. We'll have to see if this market keeps maintaining relative stability. I did see in some of the neighborhoods I went into a bunch of investors that had homes up for rent, particularly Wall Street investors. When you see Wall Street investors, that means that often there could be some downside in prices. You can see here we got a four.
That's all I'm really concerned about from this whole video is basically, man, I feel like these Wall Street investors, these companies and stuff, they're buying the homes, and they're probably buying the homes that can be made a profit on, you know? So I feel like they do have a reason to make you want to sell your home and all this other crap. I just feel like I don't believe these people, right? When they give these numbers, these reports, I just don't believe them. So it makes me feel like you'd be better off just making your own decision, right? Because look, hear me out. If you have a home, right, and in your scenario, selling the home and moving on with your life is the best course of action, regardless of if it goes up or goes down, then you should sell the house. If in your scenario, getting a home would set you up for this and that, then you should get the home. Like, I feel like we allow people to influence our decision way too much in this reality. And it's by design, but I feel like there should be no reason a company comes in and tells you what you should do with your money. I feel like it feels safe, you know, you want to believe them, but I just don't really know if that would even make sense. You're letting an entity kind of decide what your course of action is.
For sale by owner sign here. I've actually seen a bunch of for sale by owner signs here. Maybe you have more homeowners here who are deciding not to list on the MLS, I'm not so sure. But in particular, one neighborhood I was just in before this, there was a house on the market for rent at $2,400 a month. And this house was owned by a Wall Street investor who had bought it in 2022 for 340 grand. So they bought it for 340 grand and they're trying to rent it for 2,400 a month. Originally, after they bought it, the rent was 2,600. They've now cut it to 2,400 over 3 years. So that's not such a good sign from the investment perspective, right? If you buy a house to rent and then over 3 years the rent drops, that's not very good for you, especially when the property taxes and insurance no doubt are going up. And that investor house was vacant when I saw it. And it was in a neighborhood where there was about 3 or 4 homes on the market for sale in a short radius around that house. I think there was also one foreclosure. And the foreclosures, that's an interesting thing to talk about because we haven't yet seen a big surge in foreclosures yet in Florida or most of the Southeast. You know, we've seen the inventory go up, we've seen the mortgage defaults go up a bit, but the foreclosure rate is still low.
Now, I'm still actually honestly quite unfamiliar with the real estate market. I guess foreclosures are when people can't pay it and other things like that, and for whatever reason they have to maybe sell it for an as-is price. If that's what I'm not sure, I think that's what it's for. But I was wondering, is that the route to go? You know, maybe just look at a decent house and try to get one that's foreclosed, and then me personally, I try to pay cash. You know, I have some other things, some other assets I'm waiting to take off. But when they do, I do plan to get me a small house just so I can be free, not have to work anymore. That is my goal. I don't know about you. I don't want to go to work. I'm not lazy, but I don't respect work. So, yeah. But I think I got the big picture on this, man. I'll see you guys in the next video, man.